Hello again, Mr. Geishan here with another issue of Teen Talk. Today we're going to be talking about some basic definitions, and then we'll get into the worldview or philosophy, which I told you we would be talking about for this video. To begin with, we need to define what creation is. To me, creation is that God, as said in the Bible, is the designer and creator of everything. Now, you may be saying, well, aren't there other definitions of creation? Sure, there are. But with my worldview, with my philosophy being based on the Bible being true, that's why I have the definition the way I do. Now, what about the definition of evolution? Well, evolution is abiogenesis plus evolution equals everything. That includes you, me, that includes all animals, all plants, everything. Now, some evolutionists will argue that abiogenesis has nothing to do with evolution. That is simply not true. In order for having evolution to take place, you've got to have abiogenesis, which basically is that life just happened to put itself together just by random chemical interactions in the very, very early Earth. Now, how can you say that abiogenesis has nothing to do with evolution? Because if you don't get life to put itself together, you're not going to have any evolution. So obviously, abiogenesis has to be true, and it has to be there for evolution to even get started. Without life putting itself together, there is no evolution. And then what does evolution mean? Well, it means that there's evolution right and evolution wrong. And this is a whole nother topic that needs its own separate video to do. So we'll talk about that later. On to worldview or philosophy, which is critical, and we've got to talk about this first. You'll see why when we get done. Here is a blue square which represents a scientific fact, like all cells have DNA. Now here's a red square. That represents the worldview or philosophy of the evolutionist. And notice that a purple zone is created. The yellow square represents my worldview or philosophy, which is based on the Bible being true. Notice what each person's worldview has done to the blue square. It's created a different colored zone. See the purple? See the green? Those are called interpretations. You see, the evolutionist looks at the fact that all cells have DNA and it tells him something. It tells him that all cells have DNA because all cells came from a common ancestor, meaning the original cell that put itself together. And from that one cell, all cells have come. Kind of like the tree of life, where you start with the cell at the very bottom. And then every living thing came from that original one cell. And that's why all cells have DNA. Well, what about the biblical creationist? Someone like me, and someone like you, maybe. Hopefully, when you see that all cells have DNA, what does that tell you? Well, your worldview says that the Bible is true and that God is the creator. Well, of course, all cells have DNA because He designed them to all have a specific code for proteins. In other words, all creationists know that all cells have DNA because you need a code to make proteins. And DNA is a very, very complex code. Codes only come from an intelligence. So that's why this whole business of worldview or philosophy is important, because it is not about scientific facts. In fact, this whole issue is not about science versus religion. It is about one worldview against another worldview. It is about one interpretation compared to another interpretation. Everyone must decide which interpretation makes more sense. We'll come back for our third video later on this week. Until then, God bless and goodbye.